All right, Charlie Vann here with Tony Campbell and Billy Bright of Wood and Wire. Guys, how are you doing today? And I want to thank you again for taking your time with me.
Thanks for having us, dude.
And I was just gonna say, I've been
Yeah,
on.
doing good. Good to be here. Thanks.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I'm ecstatic because I've been listening to your guys' new album on loop. I really enjoy it. I love the sound of it. First of all, I also want to mention I love the artwork of it too. And your last album, North of Despair, has a really good art cover. When you guys were putting together this album, did you have a kind of an idea for the concept of the artwork? I feel like that always kind of tells a story before you start actually listening to the tracks.
Actually, not really. We delegated that over to our friend Christina Smith, who's Trevor, our banjo player's wife. She did the artwork for North of Despair as well. And, you know, we're not artists and we're not necessarily good at conceptualizing visual art. So we just knew was pretty brilliant at it and let her go with it.
Well, it's very well done, and I want to mention about on the song on the new album. I love how with your guys' style that you'll go from instrumental to also vocals. I really like that because I love sometimes just tuning into a song and it's just instrumentals. I feel like it tells a story. So with Roadie Circle, I love that it starts off with some yodeling and then it just goes right into that. When you guys are writing, and I know you guys have a very collaborative writing process, how do you usually decide, okay, I think the story is better just to be told instrumental compared to just vocals, which I think both complement each other very well?
I think it just depends on who writes the song, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, Trevor wrote the instrumental Roadie Circles, and Billy here wrote Clamp Shoot. And we do have some songs in our repertoire where they started as instrumental. On our last record, North of Despair, there's a song called Awake in the Wake. And Billy wrote that song as an instrumental first, and I added some lyrics. But, you know, I mean, it's more along the lines of who writes the song and who has an instrumental. I don't write instrumentals, but Billy and Trevor do. And so we usually kind of look to them for instrumental stuff to add to our records and our shows.
And Billy, would you go ahead?
You know, as well as just as far as what Tony was saying. Sorry, there's probably a little lag in my.
That's totally okay.
So, welcome
San
back to
Francisco
COVID
background, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. That's where I am today. It's not a backdrop. But let's see. Yeah, you know, as it like Tony was saying, he I guess doesn't generally write instrumentals, but that, and you're talking about the story of the songs and stuff like that. And yeah, like as an instrumentalist, that's my main contribution in the band, whether it's on songs that I wrote or not. You know, it's instrumental songs are usually written as instrumental songs, but it's cool that Tony mentioned that other song from our previous record, because that song was a song that was written, and then there was a certain event that happened that inspired. It was the flood of the Wimberley flood of 2015, which was an epic, I guess what they'd call a 1,000-year flood.
I do remember that.
And so, and that's very low. It happened right in my it's very local in my neighborhood, and it definitely affected me on a personal level. And we were traveling with the band at the time, and it was a very sometimes, you know, that's definitely the story infused itself into the song. You know, it was something that really happened in our lives and then infused itself into a song. That doesn't happen all the time, but in that case, it was looking back, it was a pretty neat thing to happen.
I can't believe that, man. That was 2015. I just remember hearing, you know, I'm here in Dallas, but I remember hearing about that flood. I can't believe it's been that long ago. But you talk about how everything kind of comes as far as the story. When you guys are like writing and collaborating, how everyone kind of has their own process with music when a song comes about, a story. Is it one of those, oh man, I have this idea, let's get together and make this happen? Or is it just like you were saying, Billy, you know, sometimes it's a life event and you're like, I think this would be a good story to tell.
Well, like we all, I mean, the process is kind of multi-layered as far as when it comes to, as far as the process is multi-layered when it comes to the band working on stuff, but generally we each sort of bring songs in that we've come up with in our own time, and then work on an arrangement as the band. And there's some songs going into North of Despair, Tony and I got together a few times, and after that I think to work on some songs together, like before going into with the band. But generally speaking, we kind of bring songs in that are pretty much fully realized ideas into the band. And then the band is kind of like, if you took a song as an idea, and then if you were making a painting, you have an idea of what you want the painting to be, and then you make the painting. That's kind of like adding the band to it, you know, because you get into, I don't know where you draw the line between what you call writing a song as us and what somebody who's not familiar with the process would call writing a song. Because when the band gets together and we work on the arrangements, you know, of the songs, that's really kind of where the band stuff happens. The band magic is in the arrangements and the compositions we work on together there, you know.
Well, I like that you just mentioned about kind of that correlation between, you know, the art and the aspect of the writing, and that, because that is what it is. I mean, it's such a great, it does kind of, it paints a picture. Well, I guess a visual in your mind when you're listening to, and Tony, with your vocals can be so daunting at times, which I think works. I love it. How much writing did you do, Tony? I know that your grandfather had a hunting lodge. How many songs were written on that hunting lodge?
Oh man, I'd say almost every song that I've written has at least been worked on at that place, and it's still there. I still have it, and the family still has it, and it's only about an hour from my house. So in addition to having to maintain it and do work there, I try to go there and work on songs as well. It's not real common that I complete a song in one sitting. So when I'm in a phase where I really feel like writing a lot of lyrics and melodies, I try to go somewhere where I won't have any distractions. And for me, I'm fortunate and lucky to have that place close to my house that I can go get that work done. So I'd say a large percentage of the songs that I've written have at least been touched on or worked on there during some somewhat intensive solo writing sessions. But you know, I mean, none of them really take on their form and come to life as Wood and Wire songs until we sit down with them as a band. And like Billy was saying, the quote band magic that he mentioned is essentially all of us throwing our ingredients into a pile, you know, and we all have different flavors or whatever, and what comes out is a true collaborative effort, and that includes the lyrics. You know, even if one of the guys may not get a full writing credit on the song that I wrote or Billy wrote or whatever, my lyrics for my part, and I know Billy feels this way too, it's everybody's open to give their comments on everything, you know? And so, but we don't really tell each other often what to play, you know? We kind of leave the instrumental structure and the stylistic contributions of each instrument up to the instrumentalist. But I think we've all become aware of what this band has become as a whole, and that sort of seeps through in the way we contribute to each other's songs.
Well, I also want to mention, I wanted to I know 2018 North of Despair got a Grammy nomination.
Sure
And
did.
and first off, did that put any, I mean, first of all, that had to be really exciting, but did that put any pressure when going into this new album at all? Like, I mean, or did you just like, whatever happens is going to happen. We just, want to keep pushing forward and just keep making great music.
Certainly the latter. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't tell if Billy was going to start talking. I think his mic has that lag on
well,
it.
There it goes.
Go ahead,
Zoom,
Billy.
man.
Oh no, I was just riding the lag too. I mean I don't think that we can. I don't think that we basically just didn't talk about it because I think we all kind of. I mean, nobody wanted to. There's no reason to make a lot of pressure out of what we do. There's not there's not like a lot of money at stake or a lot of I don't know. It's like the only reason to do what we do is for artistic the artistic side of it. I mean, there's no there. So they're going into something like recording a album after a Grammy nominated album. We weren't. I mean, we certainly didn't have any notion that album would be nominated for a Grammy, and none of us even knew that it was submitted to be nominated for a Grammy. I mean, it's kind of obvious that it was because we were working with a record label, and that's what record labels do. But none of us had thought of that, like or paid attention to any of that. So when we got the call that it was nominated, because none of us would have ever guessed that would have ever happened. So when we got the call that it was nominated, it was a complete shocking surprise. But so therefore, to go into the production of this album, I think the fact that happened just meant that sort of the way we were doing it already was good enough, so that there was no reason to try to change it, kind of if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. Yeah. So that was my mentality going into it. And I think that was pretty much shared. I mean, it didn't seem like anybody really wanted to talk about it. It was never like brought up and everybody was like, no, shh, or, yeah, we need to talk about that. It was just kind of like, it
just kind of see what happens
that way.
Yeah. And by the same token, it's like,
yeah, I mean,
it's almost impossible to just ignore it completely within our own individual minds. But Billy's exactly right. You just kind of ignore everything outside of making the music that you like, and we had a method for that. And like Billy was saying, if there was no reason to change any of that. I mean, we experimented with some new stuff and ways of recording and sounds because we thought it'd be fun, and it sure was, it worked out really nicely in that regard.
Well, it's a great album.
Thanks,
by the way,
man.
I love Summertime Rolls a lot. And I think that's kind of a good mindset to have, just kind of go with the flow, because it's out of your control, whatever happens, with those awards. But I mean, that is awesome for, a band here in Texas, to get that nod, to get that nomination. One thing I've always been passionate about the Texas music scene here forever. I think I always call it like a treasure chest, whether it's in Austin, here in Dallas, Fort Worth, of course, so many great musicians out there. So, I mean, that is huge. Regardless that you guys got that nomination, and like I said, going back to this new album, I mean, I love the mixture between the instrumentals, again, the vocals. By the way, Roadie Circles, that's about a border collie, correct? I think I read that right. It brought me back because I had a border collie growing up. Yeah, they're great dogs.
Oh yeah,
they are. Trevor and Christina, they had a border collie named Rhodey, and he passed away, I guess, sometime towards the end of 2018 or the beginning of 2019. And he used to, we'd go rehearse at Trevor's house, and he had some anxiety issues, and he'd walk in circles around while we were playing. And so that's kind of where that song came from.
Yeah, they're like, I had one, Pepper.
I think it was the mandolin. Yeah, the mandolin gives border collies anxiety, and many other breeds as well.
It's just, yeah,
human breeds included.
Yeah. Well, you know, I had one, Pepper. She was the first 6 years of her life, she was on a farm. So she was always herding cattle and fending off coyotes. So we brought her, it was my cousin's dog, and we brought her here to the city. It's a little different atmosphere. She was more very overprotective, but which was actually kind of nice as well. But I mean, they're good dogs. So whenever when I've been listening to that song, it's been back to Pepper. I mean, I feel like dogs always can be a great motivation for a song. I mean, my Chihuahua, you didn't see him, but he just bounced out of my chair.
Nice.
So they're always like,
yeah.
Well, Billy, you were talking about the mandolin. Actually, my grandfather played the mandolin. He also played the fiddle, and he actually was a substitute musician for Bill Wills back in the day, whenever Bill would come into town, into Texas. So yeah, he would always kind of sub in. So whenever I think about the mandolin, I think about him. Unfortunately, cool. I never got to meet him, but that's my dad's or my mom's dad. And so, yeah, of course I grew up hearing about Bill Monroe, and you want to talk about, just, bluegrass breakdown to that fast paced mandolin there. I mean, that's classic. I mean, how much inspiration came from him, especially for you?
Oh, well, I mean, quite a bit. He wasn't where I first got into mandolin, but he certainly is. He's inspiring as a mandolinist, and he's also inspiring as a creator and as a visionary, I guess you would call it, just as sort of somebody who did music the way he wanted to do it. And I would say, Bob Wills would fall into that category as well. Bob Wills was kind of like the Bill Monroe of Texas and the West with the Western swing music. And but yeah, Bill Monroe is quite a heavy influence on me. And in a lot of ways. I mean, even in the sense that I would never be so presumptuous as to think that I could carry his music forward, but his I've heard from people that worked with him and from publications or whatever, and I've heard it. I don't know where I've heard it from at this point, so many different places, but his whole method was basically with dealing with younger bands that followed in his style, since he basically invented this style called bluegrass, and then people copied it and copied it and copied it, and he had to deal with that, but his the way that you would get his stamp of approval is if you learned how to do it the right way, his way, and then came up with your own thing, so that you weren't just copying him. And so with that in mind, yes, he's definitely an inspiration, and I follow his method in that sense.
Well, yeah. For both of you guys, speaking of bluegrass, whenever I think of genres of music that will keep pushing forward and even inspiring many artists and many subgenres, I think of bluegrass, like jazz. Jazz is one of those long time, genres that I feel like is because it keeps getting passed down, and somebody's inspired by it, and maybe they infuse it in their music a little bit. And bluegrass, I look at that as well. I feel like it's going to keep going, and which is awesome. And you both talked about Bill Wells and about Bill Monroe and that love. Do you see that this is a genre that's always going to get passed down, maybe morph a little bit or infuse, because when you look at Mumford and Sons, they kind of have a little bit of that bluegrass inspiration. Do you think that is true? Possibly.
I certainly do. I think that it's a traditional music form, and traditional music forms have a strong foundation of what they're supposed to sound like. But in order for them to go on, they have to morph, and what we like to see as musicians, or what Bill Monroe might have liked to see, is that the traditional form, you learn it, and then you use that as your jumping off point to make it your own. And I think a lot of people are doing that. And one of the cool things about it is about traditional music forms like bluegrass is that it kind of ebbs and flows over the years. It becomes popular and becomes, has moments in the pop culture scene, and then it kind of feels like it's dying off, but then it comes back, and so as a result, it's kind of always there. And as musicians, there may be a somewhat of a ceiling in the bluegrass genre, but it's not a bad, it's always there, and you can play it when you're old, and you still look cool, and even cooler doing it when you're old, and you sound cooler doing it too. There are a lot of good things about the bluegrass scene, and one of the cool things about it is that it's being pushed forward by a lot of modern day musicians, and I see no signs of that slowing down.
Well, it's like it just feels like that style, no matter what kind of day it's been, type of year, you put it on, you're gonna smile, you're gonna feel good, you're gonna want to open a beer, have some whiskey,
until you listen to the lyrics and really listen.
Well, that's true. That's true. If you just have the instrumental part, that part right there. By the way, this is my Chihuahua I was talking to. This is Chewy.
Hey, Chewy.
I'm sure he would have a fun time with some mandolin. He's like the chillest Chihuahua. But
he's a good dog. He's a good dog, man.
Oh yeah, no, he's very laid back. He just sits in my lap. I mean, so, but yeah, I mean, I just feel though, like, especially just from the instrumental aspect though, I mean, it's just it's a genre that holds up, the longest of feeling so great. And you just feel, I don't know, it takes you somewhere, to a story like you guys were talking about. Now, as far as like other influences, I know, Billy, I read that you, back in the day, you were a punk rock fan. Is that correct?
Well, that's where I started. I mean, that was where my first band that I was ever in was that. And, it was that for a few years, and then quickly moved on to heavy metal and hard rock and psychedelic rock, and then acoustic stuff, and then bluegrass. I
feel like punk though is still around. It's kind of morphed a little bit. There's obviously several subgenres, but there are people getting back more into punk. I mean, I've heard people recently, actually me and my buddy, former roommate, I mean, he would always have Bad Brains on and Black Flag on, as well. He has old vinyls, and I'm like, and this is stuff that is still getting passed down, and people are like, almost like it's new to them, but it's not. There's this this musician on YouTube right now, Alex Melton. I'm not sure if you've seen him or not, but he does a lot of covers, and recently he just put out one with Blink-182 doing a cover of Semi-Charred Life by Third Eye Blind. But before that, he did a country version of a Blink-182 song. For you, Billy, as having that punk rock background, at least in the beginning, if there is a Wood and Wire song, if you guys would like to have fun covering, what punk rock song would love to cover?
Good question.
Well, that's a very good question. There's I had to go back and research some of that stuff for a couple playlists we were working on, and let's see. Well, there's a couple of you're putting me on the spot here, man. That's not cool. let's see. Let me see. I want to look at my playlist here and cheat a little bit so I can remember.
No,
something.
that's totally fine. I mean,
as far as well, as far as an actual cover goes, that gets into some. I thought of some. Oh, you know what? There's some X songs that I thought would be really cool. Of course, I'm always thinking about that. I mean, I don't like. It's not a goal of mine to do covers, but it's not like. I mean, just as like a trendy thing. It's not like, oh, I need to think of covers to do. But I'm always thinking of songs to cover. There's a couple of those Violent Femmes songs that would be great. Fun bluegrass songs. There's Devil Doll by X, or Now I Want to Be Your Dog by the Stooges. And that's that's kind of some fringes punk stuff. But then there's like some of that like Where Eagles Dare from the Misfits. I always want to go into like a bluegrass setting and do a song where the chorus is "I ain't no goddamn son of a bitch." Maybe introduce it as a gospel song or something. Yeah, those are all. I think a lot of the Clash tunes are would be of my interest as well. There's just a lot of good ones out there. I think any of them, all of them. This is a new band.
London's Calling
Next
would be
band.
good. I think London is Calling, or Ramones Blitzkrieg Bop as bluegrass. That would be different.
Yeah, absolutely. I Want to Be Sedated. That would be a good one. Or the Black Flag's TV Party would be a fun one to do. It'd be fun to take some of the like pop punk hits and play them as bluegrass songs. Some of the people might actually recognize, because there's so many that are so, deep cuts.
Like Green Day. I mean, Time of Your Life, I'm sorry, Good Riddance by Green Day would be a good bluegrass one, I think.
Yeah.
They have a lot of stuff that I feel like you can kind of transform into bluegrass.
I just ordered.
Yeah, well, that's the.
I was just gonna say I just ordered Dookie by Green Day.
I was just thinking about Dookie
on vinyl, but Billy, go ahead.
No, I mean, just punk at this point is a traditional music form, I would say, and we were just to sort of loop into what we were talking about a few minutes ago, that all that traditional music stuff it's all about being progressive. Every single one of those forms of music was a progressive music when it started. I mean, jazz, when jazz turned into bebop, that was like extremely progressive, taking all those show tunes and playing them with all those out notes and just messing around with them and jamming on them. And then bluegrass was taking this string band music and country music before it was even called country music, and playing all the popular songs of the day too fast and in the wrong key with the different grouping of instruments, and the 5-string banjo played with 3-finger style. That was all extremely progressive stuff, and punk rock, when it came along, was an extremely progressive form of rock and roll or hard rock. And what would be a great bluegrass song is Crazy Train. I can't remember if it's Ozzy or Black Sabbath. I think it's Ozzy.
No, you can cuss. You can
Randy
cuss.
Rhoads was playing with it. That would be a great bluegrass song.
Yeah, that's totally that'd be awesome.
Because in bluegrass, it's like train songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Train songs are a thing. Crazy Train would be a kick-ass bluegrass song.
Could you open up with the mandolin? That would be so awesome.
Yeah, man. Yeah, hell yeah. I'm gonna We got to do it now. You can't air this until we've worked it up because somebody else.
Yeah, hey, I'm glad to push. I mean, I just think it's cool seeing like different genres, kind of that like yeah, do a bluegrass of punk rock or crazy train. I just think that's cool. You know, making it your own. I'll tell you when I think of punk rock, and you wouldn't normally think of a person that this person kind of pushed in a way, but while we're on country and bluegrass and rock, to me, Johnny Cash is, when you think about back then, who was as most punk rock back then? Johnny Cash. So.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and he's and Bill Monroe is you know, there's a banjo player here in town who's this German guy, Rolf Seeker, and he I remember I used to play with him a lot, and him saying, you know, I like the way you play that punk mandolin, Billy. Bluegrass. There's nothing more punk than Bill Monroe, you know, and I agree with him on that. And you know, the Johnny Cash, no doubt. I mean, that album that he did that Delia's on, where it's just him and his acoustic guitar, that's one of the most, I mean, that's just badass, you know, as far as being, you know, I think a lot of that music, the thing that's common through all that stuff is being comfortable in your own skin, you know, and that's something that all those artists exhibit, and that's kind of, I think, what makes them such a joy to behold as a listener or a viewer, is just their attitude. Have you watched that country music documentary that's all the rage? It's like a college education. It's like 22 hours long. The Ken Burns thing.
I haven't yet, but it's on my to watch.
That's I hadn't either, and you know, I had kind of developed like, oh God, that's the last thing I want to see, because I had so many people tell me about it, and then of course I watched it, and now I'm one of those people. But
no, that's I mean, that's good. I mean, I've heard good things. I've heard really good things. I have friends that are musicians here, and they were talking about it, and that's how I found out. I'm like, you know what? I'll definitely. There's so much on my watch list, but that is at the top for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's very Johnny Cash centered, and the stuff that they have on Willie and Waylon, which I've always been a huge Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson fan, and the stuff that they have, the focus that they have on them as you know, Texans, and the way that intersected with everything is pretty awesome too. There's a whole segment of it devoted to them, and I learned a lot about them that I didn't know. I learned how much I didn't know about them, and it just made me, you know, appreciate them even more too. So.
Yeah, you mentioned Willie. I actually just saw him back in November at Billy Bob's in Fort Worth. Man, he still has it, and he went a whole hour, no break. And I was like, this is such a legend, obviously. But I mean, the fact that, I mean, he was just pushed through that whole hour, and it was such a magical performance. I mean, you have to see Willie Nelson at least once, I feel.
Agreed.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And one of our North of Despair songs that Tony wrote was inspired by that. Yeah, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, we played a show with Willie. Technically, I mean.
Oh, nice.
We opened the show early, then another band played, and then we had a long, like, 2-hour dinner, and then Willie played on the same stage for about 200 people for about an hour and a half. And yeah, he threw down, just like you said. I mean, his guitar playing was so cool and so unique, and you just don't hear, even to this day. It's almost something that people just don't even want to touch or try to emulate, and they shouldn't. But well, maybe they should, but he'll always have that sound that you kind of want to get after, that plugged in classical guitar sound that only that guitar seems to be able to make. And we went home that evening.
Distorted as hell.
Exactly, yeah. And yeah, I wrote this tune called Kingpin after we watched that show, and it just kind of had a backbeat vibe like he used to do, it's a road song, you know. He made me realize that I needed to get to work. Really, is what watching that show did.
Oh yeah, I mean like, and even his sister on the
Mm-hmm.
piano. I mean, she's growing too. I mean, there's no stop. And I mean, you just know you're looking at a masterpiece. Like you said, there's no one like him on the guitar. But it also brings me back to how, you know, kind of Hendrix set that bar. But speaking of Texas music, Stevie Ray Vaughan came in too, and you're like, oh, how do you top that as well? You know, we were talking about just a second ago, people making you know, somebody else's song kind of their own, giving their own version. But Voodoo Child by Stevie Ray Vaughan, I think is, I mean, it's its own song in a way, but it also does well complementing what Jimmy did with that song. But with what they could, all three of them can do on the guitar, you're just like, how do you top that? But that's the motivation. That's the fire, right?
Yeah, you don't top it. You just enjoy it and learn from it, and occasionally there'll be someone that comes along and makes their own specific mark too. You know, there'd be clones all day of Stevie Ray Vaughan, or clones all day of Jimi Hendrix, or clones of Bill Monroe, but you don't necessarily talk about them. You talk about the people who made it their own, you know, and they were inspired. There's a big difference between being inspired by and being a carbon copy of. So, so yeah, those are where you find real progressions in music and new masters.
How's things going right now with the music scene? With, of course, everything going on right now in the world, and are you guys finding ways to kind of do performances during this time? I know it's not the easiest with a lot of venues kind of closed.
Yeah, frankly, it's not going very well. A lot of the venues here in Austin, where a lot of the residencies and nightly music happen, are some of them have closed, and some of them are very, 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 very close to closing. And
Mm.
there's been some action by the city council, but there's a lot of question, and that happened last week, but there's a lot of question as to whether or not it was done the right way, whether or not it's too little too late, and whether or not there's too much bureaucracy between applying for whatever uh, this financial help is, and if it's too much of a too many hoops to jump through as well. Um, that said, we've been working on some stuff as a band to perform online. We've done a couple of live streams, and they've been fun. We're dialing in ways to make it more consistent, though I'm not sure I could tell you the detail. I'm not that it's secret. We just don't exactly know how it'll all line up yet. But I think every musician's trying to figure out the best way to keep performing in the age of COVID, and it all seems to happen obviously on the internet. But I'm also open to I can speak personally and say I'm open to seeing safe ways of witnessing live music in person too, as long as we know it's a safe way to do it. And yeah, that's a really hard thing to implement. It's hard to keep everyone safe, but outdoors with masks on, with certain social distancing measures, I think it's definitely possible. And in a town like Austin, where people care about their live music, I would hope that the citizens who want to come witness it would take those measures seriously, and the venues will enforce them. So, overall, I'm normally a real positive guy, but the immediate future for some of my favorite places, at least in town and otherwise across the country, doesn't look too good. And it's kind of up to the states and even down on this local city level to help them out financially, or let them open. And if they let them open, make sure that it's safe. So it's a fine line. It's not easy. I won't even begin to claim that I know how to do it or what to do, but I have to think that we could put together some really smart people to figure that out. And because otherwise, in a town like Austin, it's really the soul of the city. In a lot of ways. As much as it's changed, it's still there. And it's important because Austin has become a behemoth of a town, and it could easily be the live music scene could end up being swept under the rug. And I know that we don't want to see that happen.
Well, and it's kind of like that here in Dallas. Well, it's like that everywhere. The entertainment venues that aren't restaurants, that aren't outdoors. Because I know there's some stuff going on that's like patio, that has a patio, of course. Like the Rustic does some live music, but I mentioned Billy Bob's earlier when I saw Willie there, and they're trying the best they can, but they're indoor, and some of these bigger venues, a small capacity is hard. When I think of Austin, the last show I saw in Austin was a death metal band called Death Heaven, and they're at Emos out there. Cool. Which that's a awesome venue. It's kind of interesting because it's kind of like it's in a little suburban kind of community on the other side of the river, and there's like all these fast food restaurants, and boom, this gigantic venue. But I mean, I couldn't imagine right now. And Austin City Limits is on pause this year. What has kind of been the morale, though? I know you're saying it kind of seems on the opposite of optimism, but do people feel still hopeful? Are people trying to kind of adapt a little bit?
Man, it's hard to say. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say. I'd say, frankly, the morale for a lot of us in Austin is kind of low. Mm-hmm. There are good things that will come out of this. I think it'll be easy. I think a lot of venues, when we can get back to having shows, will have a way of live streaming all of their shows. So more music will reach more people. That might lead to more money for the artists, because there are ways of contributing to these live streams. So if we're playing in somewhere in the Midwest we've never played before, and the audience isn't, we weren't able to bring out a ton of people, maybe they could live stream the show and make it a little better for bands that are on tour. So I try to look at the positive, but right now, for me and my part and our part, on a local level, it's very concerning, and as a band, we have a different. We're certainly worried about ourselves and what the future holds and how it's all going to work out. But at the same time, we got good support systems as individuals. We got great families and good wives and stuff like that to sort of see us through, and we're real lucky in that regard. And we've got each other as well to collaborate with and figure out ways to continue to release music or entertain our fans online. But these venue owners and the bands that need to play almost every night in town, that's going to be a problem,
Yeah, and I was wondering if, because Austin has a huge brewery scene, if there's a kind of modified way, although a lot of breweries, everything's inside, but some have patios. I know Austin Beer Works has a great patio. If that could be a possibility, although, I don't know that you would have to definitely limit the capacity for sure. But yeah, I mean, this is just such a tough time all around in many cities. My sister lives in Nashville, Nolensville, right outside Nashville. And I love downtown East Nashville. You ever been to Winners and Losers, the bar down there in East Nashville, Winners Bar?
No, I haven't.
If you haven't, that is such a great little venue. Monday nights they have they'll have an open mic night, and you'll have. I saw a couple artists, musicians, particularly country artists from Kentucky coming in. It's just such a cool little bar, and every night's like live music. I think Losers Bar is more like rock, and they have some like classic rock bands. So. I'm not too sure how they're doing right now, but man, everywhere is kind of like you guys are saying, it's kind of hurting.
Mm-hmm. For sure. We'll see, man. We'll try to stay positive and if I'll say that for myself, if I feel comfortable playing a gig, then I'll do it. That's a personal thing for me, but I think every musician feels a little differently. So.
Well, on the positive, you guys do have this new album out that people can check out and listen to. Is this kind of the downtime kind of giving you guys more time to write additional music or just kind of collaborate? I mean, obviously not looking too far ahead, but I mean, I'm sure there's ideas during this time. And how are you guys binge watching anything? You know, we talked about all the different kinds of music, but have you been binge watching anything during this time while making music? What about you, Billy? Have you been binge watching anything?
So much stuff I can't even think of anything.
I know. I was thinking the same thing.
Have we all seen Tiger King here? There you go. I saw Cobra Kai, binge watched the first 2 seasons of that. It's fun. It's cheesy, but it's fun.
I loved Cobra Kai. I'm still in the second season, but I really
Oh,
loved
second
Cobra Kai.
season's really good. That first season was awesome. And it makes you root for Johnny a little bit. You know, obviously in the Karate Kid you went against, but you're like, man, I want this guy to succeed. I know what his past was like, and he's still rough around the edges, but man, I hope he succeeds. He succeeds.
I know. It's pretty funny, man. It's definitely nostalgic for me. I think my favorite thing that I saw, and it came out over the quarantine, was Dave.
I love Dave.
Dave was fantastic.
Little Dicky.
It's Little Dicky, who's just an immensely talented individual, and in addition to being an incredible wordsmith and hip hop artist, he's also hilarious and a very good actor. So I was really impressed with that show.
I do like some of like the music content based show. Like, yeah, Dave is brilliant. Do you guys? I've seen different like YouTube reaction videos to like, you know, military guys watching movies and kind of critiquing, pro wrestlers critiquing pro wrestler movies, MMA fighters, MMA movies. For you guys as musicians, do you ever sit through a show or a movie and kind of like, that's authentic there, you know, or you kind of really, that may be a little far-fetched. I mean, does that ever happen with you guys when you're watching movies, or like Dave, you know?
Something I do that I think is, whenever I see, this isn't exactly the answer to your question, but whenever I see a show that features a live band or some kind of musician, I'm always like, I tell my wife, I'm like, congratulations to that guy. He got the gig, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's like, they film stuff everywhere. Mm-hmm. And it's not just in LA. They film stuff here in Georgia, everywhere. And occasionally, as local musicians, you'll get, quote, an audition for something like that. And every time I see that, I'm like, all right, the guy got the gig. Congratulations, you know? And I can tell it's authentic because they're not good actors. Not really. That's one little thing. I don't know. You know, yeah, I didn't really watch a lot of music shows. I didn't get into Nashville. My wife did, and she really enjoyed it. And, I think honestly, if you made a music show that was completely and totally authentic, it wouldn't be that exciting. Mm-hmm. Be a lot of shots in the van, a lot of like weird little arguments that the band was having, and you know, I mean, it probably would be more boring than you think it'd be.
Yeah, what do they call that? The separation of disbelief, or there's a saying.
The fifth wall, right?
Well, it's like in film. Yeah, it's like in film and theater and stuff, like
breaking the fourth wall.
Like people, the viewer has to be willing to not analyze something as real, to trust it as being, to you know, remove their sense of disbelief in order to really, and that's when a show is really captivating, it takes away your sense of disbelief, and it's definitely the same with music. I mean, with all these, it's like these reality shows, it's like, you know, as somebody who works in an industry that's all about production, and production, you know, it's a process. It's kind of the same whether you're doing audio and video, theater. It's production. It's creating something to put out there. But like, you know, anybody who thinks that reality shows are I mean, the name themselves is very ironic because they're the furthest from reality. It's like, you know, you think these 8 women just happen to be going to this restaurant to dinner together right now, and you know, it's not a coincidence. You know, it's the separation of disbelief thing there is, it's pretty, whoever came up with those shows, and I know that Tony writes songs about how much he doesn't like them, but whoever came up with those shows is a production genius. I mean, it's really phenomenal. But yeah, the separation of disbelief there, it's like, you know, a lot of viewers watching that, they get sucked in and they believe everything that's happening. And if they don't believe it, they just watch it. That's the kind of the production genius of it. Even if they know it's total BS, they still watch it just for the sort of like their, you know, dirty little secret or whatever, you know, just because it's entertaining or whatnot. I mean, there's so many varieties of that. But anyway.
Well, I'll tell you a movie that I always recommend that music based is Begin Again with Mark Ruffalo and Keira Knightley. I really enjoy it. You know, it's from kind of a more independent music style. He worked at a label and kind of gets casted out and finds Keira Knightley just performing in a New York nightclub and believes in her and wants to help her write an album from scratch. And they're running around all town, breaking all kinds of rules, trying to record this album on the fly with no money. I don't know how realistic that can be, but I felt, as far as like independent music and just artists trying to make things work, I thought it was really cool.
I'll check that one out. What's it called?
Yeah.
Begin Again?
It's called Begin Again. It was on Netflix. I'm not sure if it's still on Netflix, but of course you can find it on like Amazon. It came out, I think, 2014. It's really under the radar. Like it didn't get a lot of promotion. I did see it in theaters. I was like, this is really good for a music-based kind of movie. Like I thought it was really well done. And Mark Ruffalo is great.
That's cool. Yeah, probably the only thing that's not realistic about it is just the time.
Yeah,
it's a 2-hour movie. It probably, you know, everything takes so long. It's you know, I think that's one of the things that you can't portray in any of that, whether it's no matter what kind of reality show or show about music or whatever is that, you know, there's just so much time working on stuff and driving and so much really non-glamorous, worth talking about time. it's amazing, you know, it's its own desk job, you know, for sure.
I think one of the most, to me, compelling documentaries music-wise, I mean, outside of the Rush documentary, I really enjoyed that one, but is Some Kind of Monster, Metallica documentary, where they're arguing on the album name. And it's Lars and James always go back and forth. He's like, we should call it Frantic. Like Lars is over there. And James is like, no, you know, they're just bickering for like 20-30 minutes at this table, which apparently, you know, they always have famous arguments. But I don't know. I don't know how, I mean, that's obviously a documentary, so it's authentic, but I mean, half that film was these arguments and dealing with this producer who's trying to kind of shape and change the,
you know, what's funny is I think the only thing we didn't argue about on this record was the album name.
So it was a unanimous decision.
Yeah, that actually, and that's, I'm just being facetious there, but the album name, Dominic had the idea of coming up with No Matter Where It Goes From Here as the album name. It's a lyric in the tune that Billy wrote called Home in the Banjo, and it made a lot of sense. And that was one of those things where it's like, that came through the pipe and it hit me real hard. I was like, and I think it did for the other guys too. It was like, yeah, that sounds like the one right there.
But I think we had really just all grown so sick of arguing that we were just like, yes, that's great.
Just
what's
do it.
What's the most common argument in your band that a lot of bands can relate to?
I don't know if I could even answer that. That a lot of bands could relate to?
Yeah, or the, you know, artists like, yeah, we have that same argument. Or we feel you. Oh, I think the audio's kind of.
What was the question?
Oh, so like a common argument in your band that maybe other bands could relate to that might have that same argument.
a common argument.
Where are we going for breakfast?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say.
That's a good argument.
What kind of beer? What kind of beer do we want backstage?
What kind of beer do you have backstage? What do you guys like to drink, like before a show or after a show?
Oh, well, I'm the only one that drinks anything anymore in the band, but I just whatever they have. I'm not too picky. So, but there's that's quite a broad swath these days. I mean, you kind of got to be careful asking for local craft beers, because there's such a variety there, rewarding or very trying. But I mean, in Texas, the gold standard is Lone Star.
Oh yeah. Well, it was good seeing Lone Star make its debut and True Detective.
And then the Gap, basically. But no.
Oh, I think the audio cut out again.
Yeah.
Can you hear us, Billy?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, the audio cut out again. No, I mean, I think Lone Star is great. Lone Star, I saw on one of your guys' video, 9 Banded Whiskey. I really like them. And I've been telling people, we don't have a lot of it here in the DFW area, but I keep recommending it, man. I love its smoky taste. That would be a good, especially after show kind of drink just to unwind.
That's true. And 9 Banded Whiskey is a good whiskey, and they have a new bourbon that's good, but you got to be careful with the brown stuff. You got to be real careful with the brown stuff. You go down I almost said go down the brown hole, but I guess I just said it. But if you go if you go that route, you end up in a spiral and you're on tour, then you could end up in a pretty quick downward spiral. But,
or your show is like the end of Up in Smoke, Cheech and Chong.
Exactly.
Well, that's what they're usually like at the end anyway.
Yeah. It's a good time. No, it is a good whiskey though. I mean, Austin has so many, like you said, Billy, the variety. I mean, you got 512 out there, Independence. That's why I always like escaping off to Austin every day. Dallas is getting there. Especially with breweries and distilleries now, that's such a huge market. I kind of feel like music and that kind of go hand in hand, or it can. Just got to be careful, like you said, Tony, what you drink before a show.
Yeah, or after. I mean,
yeah.
For me, in my part, once I have that one night on the road, if I have a night of over serving myself, then it's like I'm playing catch up for the rest of the week, So.
Do you guys have a late night, after show, oh man, we're hungry, let's go? Is there a restaurant, especially there, that you try to find?
Not so much in Austin. The vast majority of our shows, 90% of our shows, aren't in Austin. I think a staple for most bands that travel throughout the South, especially, is Waffle House.
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking, do you like to put the cheese on the hash browns?
Yeah, I get the hash browns smothered and covered for sure, and diced. So onions, cheese, and I forgot what smothered was, but I know that I.
It's just goodness. Yeah. I love Waffle House. It's a guilty pleasure. I've had many nights not playing music, but many nights going in there. Me and my buddy, producer Brian, we could tell you that Waffle House is our go-to. At 2 a.m., it's a different atmosphere.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, it's cliche, to say this, but the tours we do aren't that exciting. The exciting part, and there are, any good band that's an ensemble or not. Maybe there's a band leader with a band behind him or her. There's always going to be tension and little arguments and little petty things when you deal with, a group of adults living in a van and hotels together. But if you're a good band and you respect each other, the moments what makes it all fun is the show, the hour and a half or so that you play together on stage. That's when everything kind of comes together, and we kind of remember why we're there. That said, we do have good times. We'll take days off every now and then and get an Airbnb, work on music, or take some time for ourselves. But we're old, you know what I mean? Like we're not in our 20s. I got into this late, and I kind of I didn't spend my youthful years doing this, so I don't behave that way necessarily, and I like it that way because if I was 22 years old, my 22-year-old self would not have made it on some of these trips. I would just be in rough shape. So, but in any case, it's
Whataburger trips.
Yeah, exactly. But it is cliche to say that the road is hard, but it is, and it's because now we're older. We have families. I don't have kids. Billy has kids, but we have wives at home and family and friends that we miss. And but it's part of this greater good that we've all managed to convince ourselves exists in our world, and we take occasionally when it's tough, we take it for granted that people really care about our music, and it's but we try to remind ourselves that whether there's 10 people or 1,000 people out there watching us, they all left their homes that night on a night where they had just about anything they could have done. Most likely of which for me would be just to stay at home and relax and not spend a bunch of money on dinner, potentially babysitters and stuff like that, and beer and whatever at the show. So it is a really special thing that we've managed to create an art that people want to see performed live. We miss doing that, and we hope we can get back at it soon, but in the meantime, we'll try to service that desire on the internet for a while, and we'll see what happens next year.
Well, Tony, I want to thank you for your time. You and Billy, so I look like we lost Billy, but I want to thank
we both live out in the sticks, so.
Oh, I know. I totally
even more so than me. So.
I totally understand, but I want to thank both of you for taking the time to chat with me. Where can people find you guys? And yeah, I really am hoping that live music can return safely and everybody's back to enjoying Wood and Wire live.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. We appreciate you having us. The website is woodandwireband.com. We're on every streaming outlet you can possibly find. We're on all the social medias under the handle @woodandwireband. And that's Instagram, Facebook, and also now Twitch, which people are starting to get more into because of these live streaming situations. So yeah, man, we got a new record out called No Matter Where It Goes From Here. It's been out for about 3 weeks. We're proud of it, and we hope you like it.
All right, Tony. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, take care, Charlie. Thanks again, man.
Definitely. Have a good one.